my boss asked if someone wanted to help install a staircase. When we got to the house, I was shocked. He had it all: granite countertops, Persian rugs, and a collection of supercars. I'd look out the window and see the owner relaxing or practicing his golf swing. When I talked to him, he only chatted about his personal hobbies and never his businesses. I asked him, "What's the secret to your success?" He tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Mark, if you can't make money while you sleep, you'll work until you die." This is now known in the modern day as passive income. That was the moment I decided I needed to join the top 1% of men. I'd like to retread my journey with you today. It's very clearly broken into 5 different stages, just like a video game, and at each individual stage I learned something imperative to my future success. You'll learn what I focused on as a hard-nosed businessman, what I obsessed about in the world of investing, and most importantly, the many mistakes I made along the way that have made me the successful person I am today. Stage 1, the awakening. This is when I went from $0 to $20,000. My journey started as I emerged from my mother's womb, and my first words were, "Which stock should I buy?" Just kidding. Like most people, I was pretty clueless about financial education as a kid, but I had the spirit of hustle in me. One of my earliest memories of entrepreneurship goes back to when I was selling fish door to door. Just imagine wiping the sleep dust out of your eyes at 4 in the morning, heading down to a freezing pier and sitting for hours until you'd caught enough mackerel to sell for a profit. Not only that, but grabbing a slimy fish from a bag, ringing a doorbell, looking a person straight in the eye and pitching to them. This built up my confidence and sales skills, 2 of the earliest skills I needed to learn to be successful. As I earned, I soon found that any money I made wasn't really mine. Instead, it would go to places like McDonald's and the girl I happened to be dating. I always seemed to have just enough. This is called lifestyle inflation, the tendency to spend more as you make more. Whatever you earn, it becomes your new baseline, and that's the trap. But being a car fanatic, I've always dreamed of owning a Ferrari. I felt as if they sent such a strong signal to others that you've made it. I'd often speak to my friend Paul, who worked as a valet parking cars for the rich and famous. He once told me something that changed my perspective on luxuries. He said, "When people would drive up to the hotel in their Ferraris, they would watch me gawk and love every moment of it. I'm sure they felt admired, important, even respected. But actually, you know what, Mark? I didn't care about them or even notice them." Instead, I thought, wow, if I had that car, people would think I'm cool. And I wonder how many people buy these cars without realizing that people rarely give the driver a moment's thought. I learned that no one would be as impressed with my possessions and luxuries as much as me. People want to be respected and admired by others, but competence, intelligence, and kindness will bring you so much more respect than horsepower ever will. With all the information out there on the internet about how to make money or get rich quick, it can be hard to separate the truth from the marketing. Internet gurus have been getting wealthy for the past decade, telling other people how they can get rich, and there's a whole industry out there based on fantasy. But the truth is, wealth is not always what you see, but what you don't see. I decided instead I'd quietly follow my own path to wealth. But in order to do this, I needed a budget. A budget is knowing where your money will go versus where it went. Little by little, and for the first time, I started seeing my savings account go up. I started building an emergency fund, basically money for a rainy day. I didn't know exactly when or why it would rain, only that one day it would. One day, my boss approached me and ordered me to start making wooden trash cans. I made trash can after trash can. The hours would just crawl by so slowly. I went to my boss and asked him how long I'd have to keep doing this. "Until the orders stop coming in, which is probably never," he said, and I felt so deflated. Although I was saving money, I didn't feel passionate about what I was doing, but I wasn't thinking big enough. After all, I didn't care about luxuries, so why would I need more money? Then it hit me. I realised that control over your time is the greatest thing money can buy. If I had passive income, I could spend my time doing the things I really loved. The problem is, it takes a lot of time or money to start making enough passive income to become financially free. We spend thousands of hours every year working in the pursuit of money, so I asked myself, what was I truly passionate about? I had a burning passion for radio controlled models, and I noticed many people in this industry were making a lot of mistakes. I saw the true potential and the ways that I could improve on what had come before me. I once read in a book that if you could identify a problem and you had a better way of doing things, you could turn it into a business. Stage 2, the hustle. This is when I went from $20,000 to $100,000. So I got to work. I was so excited about my business plans that I shared them with a close friend and confidant. And to my shock, the unimaginable happened. He stole my idea and set up my entire business for himself. But before I get into that, first I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Public.com. Let's be honest, 2022 has been a pretty volatile year for the stock market, and that's exactly why our long-term sponsor, Public.com, wants to help you become a better investor. On Public, you can invest in individual stocks as well as ETFs, all the while learning from notable investors, analysts and top CEOs with their optional social features and town halls. My favourite thing about Public is they don't participate in payment for order flow by selling your trades to market makers, meaning they have no reason to incentivize you to trade more than necessary like some other platforms do. On Public, you can invest, learn and see what top investors are doing all in one place. And the best part is, for a limited time, you can get a free start worth between $3,000 and $1,000 with the link down below in the description. Anyway, back to the story. The reality is that I needed some money to pursue my dream, but my savings just weren't enough. I wasn't about to give up. I drew up a business plan, went to the bank and applied for my first loan. It wasn't easy and I had to visit multiple banks. However, eventually I secured the money I needed. While some people earn their wealth investing in the stock market, I reinvested the earnings from my businesses to open more stores and even buy back my original idea from my old friend. I started to know more and more people in the business world. A lot of these individuals became my mentors and would teach me things like how to build a business that scales, how to improve sales, and how to manage people. As my income grew and I solved problems, I was not only growing my net worth, but becoming a top 1% man as well. As the good times continued, I increasingly bet on them continuing, which led to one of my most significant life crashes and moments of despair. I remember it like it was yesterday, walking into the shop that I had initially started to give my father a job in his later years, and instead of being greeted by the magical emporium filled with all the toys that I could have only dreamed of having as a kid, I was met with a smashed roof, empty shelves and my products laying broken, thrown across the floor. This hit me so hard that the memory has been seared into my subconscious and I sometimes still see it when I close my eyes. You may think, it's all right, Mark, I know you, I bet you had insurance, everything was okay and you bounced back. Well, in fact, I'd grown so fast and I was making so much money that not everything was correctly structured within my business. Although we were insured, I'd forgotten to update it with all the new stock that we'd acquired since the opening of the store. But the disaster doesn't stop there. It gets even worse. I got a phone call a few days later and one of my staff informed me that another 2 locations had been hit. Luckily, one of these attempts was unsuccessful on my flagship store as they couldn't break through the door. However, they'd driven a truck straight through the side of the store that was responsible for serving the entirety of London, and the damage was horrendous, let alone the stock that we lost. That's when I learned about the balance between risk and reward. See, making money requires taking risks, operating quickly and putting yourself out there. But keeping money requires the opposite. It requires humility and fear that what you've made can be taken away from you just like that. Once you lose 95% of your money, you have to gain 1,900% just to get back to where you started. Taking too much risk can bury you so deep in a hole, it can be nearly impossible to get out of. I even started to move my operations online to adapt to the changing times. Stage 3, the trap. This is when I went from $100,000 to $1 million. I realized that one of the biggest problems people face is when they turn their passion into a vehicle to accumulate money. They are now reliant on it to fund their lifestyle, leading to their passion becoming their prison. I mean, the biggest bottleneck in my business was actually the business owner, me. As the business got bigger and as we tried to move it online, so did the number of problems, complaints and things to worry about. In the middle, I call this the performance gap. The difference between someone who becomes a millionaire and someone who's just getting by lies in their obsession with closing this gap. Most people's paths look something like this, up and down all over the place, and they never reach their end goal. A person who becomes a millionaire in their 50s will have a path a bit more like this, eventually getting to their goal. Now my path was a little bit different. Now I managed to go from point A to point B pretty quickly. To be honest, I think the only reason I managed to bridge this gap was because I didn't have any other options. I wasn't particularly talented or smart, I didn't have any qualifications to lean on, and after getting bullied by my first boss, I quit the usual 9-to-5 grind. So I made a promise to myself to become wealthy as fast as possible. I did everything in my power to bridge the performance gap, and I became a millionaire in my 20s. If you only remember one thing from this video, then let it be this. The amount of money you make is always directly proportional to the amount of perceived value you give. To put it simply, the bigger the problems you're able to solve, the more money you'll make and the faster you'll bridge the performance gap. So the first thing I want you to do is draw out a Venn diagram like this. In this section, I want you to write down the things you like to do. So if I was doing this, I'll put down racing cars, flying planes, traveling, and playing golf. I'm sure you have a lot of others you can add, so just go crazy with it. In this next one, write down the things you're good at. Off the top of my head, I'd say having conversations, building and designing models, leading teams, and carpentry. And finally, write down the things that people will pay you a lot for. Let's put down consulting, building structures, and designing complex mechanics. The trap that most people fall into is only considering one of these factors when they're deciding what they want to do with their life. I mean, imagine choosing a job just because you love it, but you're stuck making minimum wage, and before you know it, you're hating what you once loved. Talk about a passion killer. Or picture this, you're good at something, so you make it your job, but you're working your fingers to the bone and still not making enough money. You're stuck in your comfort zone, not really going anywhere. And then there's this scenario where you pick a job just because it pays well, which sounds good, right? Well, not if you're miserable every single day. That's why the only solution to becoming rich and happy is to find something that's in all sections. I call this the value zone. I managed to find this early on by combining my passion for model helicopters with my skill for building models and advice people would pay for. This led me to opening multiple model shops and designing my own brand of models that I sold across the globe. The problem with the way most people look at business is they want to find the side hustle or the method first and then try to fit themselves around it, rather than nailing down their value zone and then finding the correct side hustle to start for them. So now you know how to find your value zone, it's time to pick the right vehicle to drive you in a straight line to your destination. Let me ask you a question. Would you rather have $1 million in assets or earn $1 million per year? Think about that for a second. Of course, you want both, right? Well, to do this, you're going to need two different vehicles. One for making money and the other one for investing money. Let's start with making money. This should be your active vehicle. Think of it like a motorbike. You can choose between a product-based business like I started, a content business like making YouTube videos, and my all-time favorite, a service-based business. So why is a service-based business my favorite when I produce products and also make YouTube videos? Might seem a bit strange, right? One word: timing. And I'm not talking about timing the market, but instead your career timing. Your initial side hustle should have the potential to rake in about 100k a year. But remember, the venture that catapults you to 1 million or even 10 million a year is not going to be the same. When you're starting, resources are usually pretty tight, so it's smarter to launch a service-based business as it has minimal setup costs. Even better if you could do it from a laptop in your spare time. So take a look at your diagram again and brainstorm a service you can offer within your value zone. Now for investing money. This should be your passive vehicle. Think of it like the sidecar on your motorbike. You know, like the one in Harry Potter. Loads of people treat investing like it's just another side hustle, chasing it with that same get-rich-quick mindset. But here's the real deal. Investing isn't about overnight riches. It's a tool to grow your wealth. And if you do it right, you can just set it and forget it. After you've made your free account, all you have to do is select pies. These pies represent different slices of stock. For instance, if you have a pie with 25% Tesla, 25% Meta, and say 50% Google, and you invest $100, it will be divided amongst those stocks. This means $25 would go into both Tesla and Meta, and $50 would go into Google. You can choose to make these investments at a frequency that suits you, daily, weekly, or monthly. Let's set one up together so you can follow this video step by step. You have the option to use pre-made pies, and there's lots of options in here, such as this one that focuses on companies that pay dividends, and this one here that invest in AI companies. Although this looks simple, please always do your own research into stocks you want to invest in, rather than just trust in the pie creators. This pre-made option is great to give you some ideas, but I encourage you to make your own. So let's go back to select, build a custom pie. Now, you can select whatever stocks you want to include in your pie. So if you're just a beginner, then simply click the S&P 500 index fund. This allows you to invest in around 500 of the largest public companies in the USA with just one click. This value projection is really awesome as well, as it shows you just how much you could make based on historical averages. I mean, say we invested £5 a day for 25 years. This says that you will have only invested £45,000 and your portfolio could be worth 1.04 million, and if we expand that to 40 years, you could have a portfolio worth 17.34 million. But hang on, Mark, isn't investing risky? Of course, stocks can go up and down, and even the S&P 500 has seen good and bad days. However, no one has ever lost any money if they've held for more than 20 years. Even when the market dips, all past dips since 1950 have been made up for by market rises. In simple words, the S&P 500 shows that playing the long game and sticking with your investments can be really worth it. It's personally made me millions without me having to do any work. That's why I'm such a big fan. Since I'm planning to talk about the Trading 212 app anyway, I reached out to them to see if they'd be interested in sponsoring this portion of the video. They agreed and are offering a free stock worth up to £100 to anyone that uses the code Tilbury when they create an account. Plus, you get more free stocks by inviting your friends. Both of you will get a free share as long as they fund their account. Right, now you've nailed down your value zone, got your active money generating vehicle, and set up your passive investment app, it's time to think about the next section. One of the biggest lies gurus tell you is that you need 7 different income streams to become successful and reach your end goal. This causes people to get so caught up juggling multiple income sources and their social lives that they end up slowing down and losing their focus completely. You have 3 main limited resources: money, time, and energy. If you want to do this with me, grab a piece of paper and 3 different colored pens. Firstly, make a list of everything you do in your life. This should include everything. Now draw a graph like this and divide it into segments corresponding to the number of items on your list. For my example, that would be 6 segments, but for you, it could be more or less. First, use a color to shade in the proportion of money you spend on each segment every month. Then use a different color to shade in the amount of time you spend on each activity monthly. Lastly, use yet another color to show the amount of energy each task requires. You should have something that looks a bit like this. Here's the key: your resources will always be limited. While it might be possible to increase the amount of money you have, increasing your energy and especially your time just isn't possible. When I do this activity with people, it's amazing how much they spread their resources to all different areas of their life. Now, I do get work-life balance, but when you're trying to build your wealth at a quick pace, you really can't spread yourself too thinly. When I was building my first business, I put my head down and I worked like crazy. When I snapped out of it, I'd lost a large chunk of my social life, I was out of shape, and I hadn't spent very much time with my family. Now, was that healthy? Probably not. But did it make me successful? Very. I devoted all of my resources towards a single business for an skills, but still no money. And to reach level 3, you need both skills and money. As a millionaire who started off with absolutely nothing, I've been through all of these levels. And if you do too, then you'll certainly be able to make more than $1,000 per day. And don't worry, I'm not going to be suggesting you spend hours watching ads, testing websites, or filling out those useless online surveys. I mean, they only pay a few dollars anyway, so what's the point? Instead, I'm interested in the big bucks, so these are side hustles you can make good money from. Of course, the faster you progress through the levels, the more money you can make. Level 1, no skills, no money. In this level, it's all about using your time as strategically as possible to create the most amount of money. The first side hustle is being a content critic. This one isn't as well known, but it's definitely in high demand. I'm even willing to pay someone to do this for me. So listen up and let me know if this sounds like something you'd be interested in. The job of a content critic is to give unbiased, honest feedback. Honesty is such a rare thing to find. Most negative comments come from haters, and fans rarely like to offer criticism as many people take it the wrong way. The majority of content creators have developed a tough skin and are actively looking for ways in which to improve their content. That's why, if you're a genuine fan of a particular YouTuber, then you could actually be far more valuable than you realise. So if this sounds like something you could be interested in, then leave me a comment below suggesting what content you'd like to see on my channel, and I'll reach out to the people with the best ideas and be their first client. I'm happy to pay a fair amount for a great feedback report from a viewer, and I'm sure many other creators would be open to doing the same. With multiple clients, you'll be able to build up to more than $1,000 in no time. The second side hustle is flipping Instagram theme pages. This is something you can do with just an iPhone and a bit of time. These are pages that are focused on specific subjects. When I first heard that you can make money from flipping these, I was actually quite shocked. Back in my day, I had to actually buy and sell physical products like cars, for example, but now doing this online actually makes complete sense. Just think about it. When was the last time you scrolled on Instagram and didn't see a sponsored post? They're everywhere, aren't they? This just shows brands are putting loads of money into Instagram adverts, which makes the pages more valuable. If I were you, I would start and grow pages in particular niches by posting regular reels. Personally, I'd pick a car theme page, as I used to race cars, so I know the niche has a big demand from advertisers. I've seen some of these pages sell for thousands. A bonus one in this level is using the link in the description to get 16 free stocks worth between $2,000 and $2,000 in return for signing up to Moomoo. They're a great investing platform and it's basically free money. Level 2, some skills, no money. These online side hustles require more upfront work to begin with, but as you develop your skills, you'll be able to charge a lot more than the average person, as you're providing more value, and this of course equals higher pay. The third side hustle is designing thumbnails. I actually ran a competition to find a thumbnail editor for this YouTube channel. I did this on my Instagram and we had hundreds of submissions. You might be thinking, if hundreds of people applied, isn't there too much competition? In all honesty, only 3 designers actually stood out to me in that competition, as they took the time to understand my style, and rather than just creating a pretty graphic, they really considered how they could get people interested in clicking. Creating effective thumbnails is more of a psychological task than a graphic design one. The best thumbnails are often simple to create, but the idea behind them is very clever. Just think, if you can increase a YouTuber's click-through rate by even 1 or 2%, then hiring you means instant profit, and you're justifying your own wage. Out of the 3 candidates that stood out, I hired 2 of them myself, and I recommended the third to one of my friends. If you can master this skill and sell 10 thumbnails in a day for $100 each, then that's $1,000 right there. You could charge less and do more, or even charge more and do less. The choice is yours depending on your skill level. The fourth side hustle is tutoring. Now, before COVID, I probably wouldn't have added this one to the list, as most people wanted in-person tutors. And honestly, this business model isn't great, as it's very time intensive, and the amount you can charge is also pretty capped depending on the competition in your local area. However, I really think the world has changed. If you're talented at a particular subject, it may be a great option to teach it online. The key here is to sell the transformation rather than a tutor in itself. I mean, most people don't really go to a personal trainer to improve their technique. They go to become a fitter person. That's why they're always using using before and after photos to advertise their services. The same goes for tutoring. You need to sell a specific outcome to a standardized test, such as GCSEs and A-levels in the UK. Facebook is the perfect place to advertise, as it's full of mums that want their kids to do better than everyone else's. Trust me, if you find the right Facebook groups, the demand is sky high. The great thing about doing it online is that you can cut out all the travel time, which means you can work with more people and earn more money. You also don't have to just work for people in your local area, as you can teach anyone anywhere in the world. If you're able to sell 10 spots in a group class for $25 each, then that's $250 an hour. Once you achieve this, you can start filling more hours. You may think that people won't want group classes, but if you give them the outcome you promised, it doesn't matter how you deliver it, especially if you put all the students in a Facebook group and offer them support outside of lessons. Of course, if you're selling the outcome of getting into medical school or completing your exams as a doctor, then you can charge way more, as the potential outcome you're selling is worth a lot more money. The fifth side hustle is creating logos. Have you ever looked at a famous logo and thought, that's so simple, I could do that? I know I certainly have, and I'm ancient. So I'm sure you younger guys watching this will be able to master this one easily. We recently held a competition on my Instagram account where we paid the winner $1,000 for creating a logo for our brand, Strike It Big, which is run by my son and I. We weren't looking for crazy design skills, it was all about the idea. Even if the logo was hand drawn, we were prepared to pay the money if it was a good idea. With this side hustle, no one cares. Now, lots of people will try and tell you that becoming rich is easy, probably because they want to sell you some sort of get-rich-quick scheme. However, this isn't the case, especially at a young age. It's not impossible to become wealthy, but you do have to be very strategic. I'm not pretending to sell a magic bullet. In fact, I'm not selling anything. I just enjoy sharing my many years of experience, and I personally believe by avoiding these 8 things, you'll have a much higher chance of becoming rich. Hi guys, it's Mark. So let's make money interesting so that you can grow your wealth. First up, we have extended warranties. I have to say, they're one of the biggest scams out there. Well, apart from the Squid Game token, that's for sure. I learned this when I bought my first method of transport, a Yamaha DT100 motorbike. I paid for an extended warranty, which they added to the monthly payments of the bike. Every month they were feeding on my bank account like some sort of vampire. The worst thing of all is I didn't need the extended warranty, but the salesman used fear tactics to pressure me into purchasing it. Just think about it. When you buy a new PC, the chances are the retailer bought the PC from a third-party supplier, meaning the amount of profit they make is very small. That's why it makes sense for them to push an extended warranty onto you. It's where all the extra profit is made. What people seem to forget is a lot of credit cards offer an extended warranty. So you can just purchase an item on your credit card to get the same protection. And you pay no interest as long as you pay it off at the end of every month in full. Most people just completely forget that they have an extended warranty. Not to mention the fine print, which usually makes it very hard to make a claim. So it's good as throwing your money down the drain. Normally they ask you if you want a 3-year warranty. However, the manufacturers cover the first 2 years anyway. So the reality is you're only buying an extra year anyway. So honestly, when you factor in your consumer rights and using a credit card for payment protection, why would you need an extended warranty? I bet a lot of shops don't want you to know this. Number 2 is new cars. What if I told you that a new car was the #1 killer of wealth and financial freedom? The untold truth is that a lot of people take on car finance to look and feel rich, but most of the time they don't even own their own home and are living paycheck to paycheck. I was looking to buy a new car when I was around 19 years old, and I was amazed to find out that I could buy the same car pre-owned for around half the price. So from that point on, I promised myself that I wouldn't buy a new car unless I really wanted it and I could buy it from my passive income. In fact, I actually bought my first brand new car when I was in my early 30s, and it was for my wife. The first time I bought a new car for myself was around the age of 35. I am such a loving husband though. I now have a Tesla Model 3 as it's a great write-off for my businesses, but I still spend most of my time driving around in my old van from A to B. So many people finance their cars, it's gotten to the point that car dealerships don't even tell you how much the car costs. They just ask you how much you can afford every month, and if the car seems too expensive, they just lengthen the payment term so it seems cheaper. Those cheeky chappies, you gotta watch them. The average car payment in the USA is between $500 and $600 every single month just to drive a fancy car, and even when it's paid off, most people just keep upgrading as it's a status symbol. It's like an endless cycle of flexing. Just to drive this point home, average stock market returns are 10%. If you invested $500 a month for 30 years, you'd have over $1 million for retirement, and that's going off 10%. And we've all seen the crazy crypto returns lately, so just use your imagination of what's possible. Talking about crypto, if you want to grab $10 worth of free Bitcoin, then for a limited time, Coinbase is giving it away when you open an account. I'll leave the link below. Third, we have penny stocks. While it's true people have made a lot of money by investing in penny stocks, it's a real gamble. Believe it or not, the average annual penny stock return is actually minus 30%. Penny stocks are extremely high risk investments that usually have very little information and history, as the companies can be relatively new. This could be an absolute recipe for disaster due to the pure volatility of the stocks. Small market caps and low liquidity means it's far easier to manipulate the price of the stock. For example, the big stocks like Tesla have market caps far in excess of 1 trillion, so a few whales selling hardly makes a difference to the price, whereas a penny stock typically has a market cap of under 300 million. So all it takes is a few big sales and it can send the stock through the floor. I invested in penny stocks when I was younger and I had some great luck. This was back in the days of the Wolf of Wall Street. They used to have huge rooms full of salesmen on the phone pumping up the prices of whatever penny stocks they liked. These were known as boiler rooms. This was also they could sell at the peak and make huge profits for themselves. I think I got lucky and jumped in on a few of these penny stocks and sold before the whales, leading to a nice profit. So you may be thinking, why have I put this on the list? Well, the truth is that I got lucky, and looking back now, the potential downside was really not worth the risk. Number 4 is eating out regularly. Now, I don't want to seem like a downer, but the average American household spends $3,000 plus per year on eating out, and that's not even accounting for alcohol as well. When I was building my wealth, I always saw eating out as a waste of money, and therefore never fell into this trap. I learned how to cook at school, and I still enjoy cooking now when I have the spare time. Not to mention, cooking at home is generally a lot healthier.
Well, your body is a temple, Dad.
Yeah, probably Buddha. I think the bigger issue here is drink. Not only does it hold you back financially from your goals, it can also throw you off your game the next day, which is never good. I believe in maximising every day, and successful people don't have time for laying around all day with a hangover. The richest CEOs in the world, like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, probably don't mind a drink, but they're certainly only keeping that sort of thing for special occasions. Next up is expensive gifts. It's so easy when you're young to think your friendship group is amazing and you're going to be friends forever, but that's just not the case. I often sit back and reflect on how far I've come, and when I look back, it's amazing how many people have come and gone from my life. Maybe this is because I never bought them expensive gifts. But seriously, when you're young, no one expects you to buy luxury gifts, and if they do, then, to be honest, they're no friend to you. I never saw the point of buying expensive gifts when I was building my wealth, and my girlfriend, now my wife, has never had any problem with that. If love is in your heart, then it doesn't need to come out of your wallet.
You should consider being a dating coach, Dad, with advice like that.
What can I say? I've still got it, son. But seriously, with all that said, it's important not to waste money on expensive gifts, especially for people that could end up being temporary. Every single expensive item you buy for yourself or someone else is a major setback, as early on in your journey it's the most important time to be investing so things can start compounding. I'm not saying you can't buy. I'm going to be gifting her $1,000 as well as arming her with the knowledge she needs to take the plunge as a complete beginner investor so she can start her journey to becoming rich and financially free. There's an old saying, be the person you needed when you were younger, and that got me thinking, sometimes with investing the hardest part is just making a start. So if you're thinking thinking about investing but find the whole process a bit daunting, or have started and want to find out some more, then this is the video for you. We're going to be going through everything step by step, from personal finances and taxes to investment strategies and actually setting up the core account. So make sure to watch to the end so you don't miss out on some great investment knowledge. We'll get started as soon as you hit that like button for the LTube algorithm. So Laura, what do you think when I say the word investing?
I get a little bit scared. I know it's the way to go. I'd love to learn a bit more about it and put my money in the best place, but if I'm honest, I don't really know much at all.
Well, it's normal to be a little bit scared, that's for sure. Judging by our analytics, not many girls are that into investing. Why do you think that is?
I'm not really sure why that is, but I'd like to learn a bit about it and show that it's possible for anyone to do, use it as a way to get rich.
Well, it's not all about getting rich, it's more about building your long-term wealth, but we'll get into that later.
What? I was here to get rich.
I'll tell you what I can do. How about this? I'm going to give you $1,000 to invest in anything you like.
That sounds really good, thank you. Let's get going.
I think we should. Let's dive in. People always say to me that they'll get good at managing their finances when they earn more money. But the truth is, anyone can go broke, even celebrities. You know, take Michael Jackson, for example. He was the king of pop with an estimated estate value of over $236 million when he died. But he left debts of over $400 million. So Laura, how would you say your finances are at the moment?
I'd say they're okay. I don't look into them too much. If I want to go out for a meal with my friends, I'll spend the money. But I do try to save about half of what I earn. I just don't really tend to track it.
Okay, well, tracking is a really good idea, and it's really easy nowadays to track your money using some of the apps that are available, and by tracking it you'll tend to spend less, so that's always good. But do you have any credit card debt or anything like that?
I don't. I spend my money on my credit card, but then I do pay it off every month.
That's great. You've been watching the videos, haven't you?
Yes.
It's always best if you use your credit card because it'll help you build your credit score. And if you pay it off at the end of every month, you're going to pay no interest whatsoever. And it's a win-win.
Oh, okay. So why is building your credit score so important?
Well, at some point in the future, you're going to probably want to borrow, be that for a house or for a business. You never know what you want to borrow for. And if you've got a good credit score, it's going to cost you a lot less in interest fees, and you're going to find it easier to borrow in the first place. So that's why it's so important to build a good credit score.
Oh, okay.
Taxes are something we should all care about, as at the end of the day, why would you want to give away more of your hard-earned money than you absolutely need to? When it comes to investing, in most cases, you are required to pay taxes on the profits that you make. This is called capital gains tax, and it's between 10 and 20% depending on your income. It's really important to minimize the tax you pay in these areas, so you're able to invest more for your future. And there are two really simple ways that you can take action. Now, the first is to open up a tax advantaged account, and the second is to start some sort of side hustle or business so you can write off all your expenses.
Why is a side hustle a good thing to have?
Well, it's all about when you pay your tax. If you get paid $100, for example, from work and you want to go out for a nice meal, well, it's all well and good, but you've already paid your tax, haven't you? So if that's 20%, $20 is already gone. Now, with a side hustle, you get your $100 and you want to go out for a meal, you can go out for a meal and you can then write that off. So when you come to pay your tax, you've got less money to pay your tax on, so you get taxed less.
Is that like bad?
No, it's 100% allowed because you're having a business dinner, you're talking business, and that business needs to be done over a dinner, so that is an allowed thing.
Yeah, that sounds really good. I have been thinking about doing a side hustle for a while now. I think that's always something I've wanted to do in the back of my mind, but I haven't actually got around to it. It's just deciding what I want to do. I've been thinking about a lot of things, like I love seeing how people can do like Gymshark modelling on the side and being a bit of an influencer. That sounds amazing to me.
It's extremely important to research any investment before throwing all your money in. So Laura, have you heard of any before, and is there anything you've invested in?
I haven't invested in anything. Obviously I hear a lot about like cryptocurrency and stocks and shares, but it's all like a completely different world to me, and I don't know anything about it. But I know that my money isn't very good sitting in my bank account. I want to do something with it.
Well, your money sitting in your bank account is actually losing you money, because you're probably earning about 0.1% interest per year, and that literally is nothing. And with inflation at more than that, around about 2 to 3% a year, that's actually losing value year on year.
I think the thing that I was looking at doing is buying a buy-to-let or something.
Okay, well, we can discuss that and run through the main investments which are good for beginners in order of least to most risky. So you can then decide what you want to do with that $1,000 I gave you.
Oh wow, okay. So the less risky it is.
Generally, the less reward,
Okay.
but the higher risk.
The better the reward.
Now, an index fund, simply put, is a basket of stocks. So instead of buying hundreds of different stocks separately and having to manage them all at once, you can buy into a simple, low-cost index fund.
Do you get to choose what stocks they are?
No, you don't get to choose what stocks they are, but you can choose from a lot of different index funds.
Oh, okay. And does it matter what country you invest in?
Back when I was younger, I might have gone for an index fund based in the UK. But of course, nowadays, with the invention of the internet, of course, these companies in America, they are absolutely global. So they're always looking for more growth, be it in China, Australia, wherever it happens to be. So by investing in these American companies, you've got a global player there, haven't you? And they're passively managed as well. So there's not a manager there, it's all done automatically. That's why the costs are so low.
If I invest all my money in like a risky one, could I then lose it all? And it sounds like a silly question, but could I lose more? Could I go in debt or something?
Well, when you invest, your capital is always at risk. You have to remember that, but hopefully over the long term it'll be good. Now, unless you leverage your money, you can't actually lose more than you invest. So if you invested, for example, $100, the most you can lose is $100. However, if you leverage your money and bought things on margin, then of course you could lose more than you actually invested.
Okay, what does leveraging your money mean?
Well, leveraging your money is when you borrow money against your investment, or it's also known as margin. So for example, if you invested in a share, say you wanted to buy $100 worth of shares, but they were offering you 2.5 margin, you could actually have another $250 to go with yours. So you'd actually have an investment of $350. Of course, then you could lose that whole $350. Next is investing in yourself with a side hustle or further education. This is a low risk because the power is in your hands. Starting a side hustle has limitless potential returns, which is exactly what you want when you're trying to build wealth. So does this sound like an option to you?
Yeah, it sounds really good to me. I like the idea of investing in myself, not just getting my nails done and eyelashes done, obviously, but doing things like university, but it's kind of, you don't see the return straight away.
So how have you found that coming from university into the workplace?
So I feel like just with my degree didn't get me a job. You have to have other employability skills as well, and a lot of places often want a lot of experience and a lot of time in things that I haven't had time to do. So I definitely see the value in investing in yourself and enhancing your skills to make you more employable.
You've also thought about and mentioned side hustles as well, so of course you can invest into that.
I do love photography, a bit of videography. My mum's friend had a wedding and she didn't have a photographer, so I hopped in last minute and managed to do that, do a bit of video as well.
And did you do that as a paid job?
I did it for a bottle of gin. So,
So you're cheap then, that's what you're saying, aren't you?
No, I did it for free.
Well, sometimes that can be a really good investment as well. When you do a job for free, you're building up a portfolio. And again, quite often you need to do 3 or 4 jobs to build that portfolio up. So when you do want to charge people, you can show them exactly how good you are. Next up, we've got individual stocks, which are a medium risk. An individual stock is investing into one specific company. For example, Amazon would be considered an individual stock. The returns can be higher as it brings more exposure to one investment, but stocks can go either way. So I only invest in individual stocks with high conviction.
So a stock with high conviction, does that mean that it's going to give you a big return and that's why you invest in those ones?
Well, what it means is that you've done your homework on the individual stock. You've looked into the fundamental analysis of the company and you can see that it should give you a high return over the long term.
So fundamental analysis, that sounds a little bit complicated.
Well, actually it's not complicated at all, and you can find out all this information on Yahoo Finance, and you can pull up the company you're interested in and look at their balance sheets and things like that, and their profit and loss and where the company is going. And also it's important to look at the leadership of the company as well.
Okay.
Next we come to real estate, and I'm putting this as high risk for beginners, as real estate often requires a mortgage, which can mean taking on quite a substantial amount of debt. However, real estate is a great way to accelerate wealth and often performs really well during inflation.
I've always looked at Airbnb and I'd love to do that kind of thing.
If you're looking to do Airbnb, you've really got to make sure that that property can stand on its own without that platform, because it is inevitable, which means people will face financial trouble, possibly lose their jobs and maybe even their homes as well. But this doesn't have to be you. If you make the right decisions now, then a recession will be a golden opportunity to make more money than you've ever imagined. After all, it's coming, so you may as well profit from it. So in this video, I'm going to share the blueprint I used to make millions of dollars in the last big recession. And as you can probably tell from my hair color, I've lived through 2 major recessions, so I'm experienced when it comes to this topic. But hold your horses, before we can get into how you can beat a recession, we first need to talk about what a recession actually is. Recently, the economy has been booming. Products have been selling faster than ever, and companies have been growing at breakneck speeds. But at the same time, the world is unstable and things are beginning to unravel. A recession is measured by GDP, which stands for Gross Domestic Product. Now, this might sound boring, but it's the total amount of all value created in an economy. If you were to buy this RC car from me, for example, this would actually contribute towards the GDP. Now, if this goes down for more than 6 months, we're officially in a recession. By the way, if you want to buy this car, let me know. Before the last big recession in 2008, I spotted the signs early on, and I knew there was a prize waiting for me as long as I could complete the 3 challenges that stood in my way. Nowadays, this mission remains the same, and you can set yourself up for the same success by following my strategy, no matter who you are. The first challenge was the stock market. I needed to figure out how to outsmart it, and this is still just as important for you to focus on today. Stocks are one of the easiest things to start investing in, as it requires very little time and effort to get started, and the upside potential is huge. No one tells you this at school, but if you have an average salary and invest 10% of it correctly each month, then you're almost guaranteed to become a millionaire. So is now the right time to buy stocks, or is it best to wait considering the uncertain times ahead? Well, the sad thing is, when it comes to investing, most people don't even get started, as they see the stock market as a place for the rich to get richer and too complicated for the everyday person. Unfortunately, of the few that do pluck up the courage to start investing, most only do so when everything's booming and lose interest, or worse, sell their stocks as soon as things take a turn for the worse. This just leaves them trying to time the market for the best possible re-entry point, which probably isn't going to come anytime soon. So as much as the stock market is about strategy, it's also about psychology. A dip is technically the best entry point, but the hardest to get excited about. I get that investing your money every month and then watching the prices go down is so demoralizing. It just feels like you're burning money and getting nowhere, but it's all about thinking long term. Let me take you back to 2008. The business I started from scratch was gaining some real traction, and I was enjoying providing a nice life for my wife and 10-year-old son. Now, when I say nice life, I could have been going crazy and letting the money go to my head. My accountant once said, "With the amount of income you have, Mark, you could be living like a king, but instead you live like a church mouse." But that was all part of the plan. I knew that a recession would come and that a market crash would also be right around the corner. I saw firsthand when my dad was impacted by a recession in the 1970s, and I didn't want the same for me and my family. So all while my business was booming, my products flying off the shelves and my income looking like it would never end, I was saving up my money ready to deploy. Most people couldn't understand this, and many of my friends were saying I should invest in this stock because it was the next big thing. Honestly, every week it felt like there was another next big stock that was just ready to go to the moon. You might have heard the saying, cash is trash, and for the most part, I agree, but not during a recession. Don't get me wrong, I was investing, but I wasn't being drawn into the hype. This was extremely hard, but in the long term proved to be the correct decision. I'm not claiming to be a financial fortune teller, but I do know a thing or two. The US stock market has always recovered after a crash. A decline in stocks doesn't necessarily mean a recession is inbound, and a recession doesn't always mean a crash in the stock market. So knowing all these things, it wasn't smart for me to sell my stocks when the recession hit, but it was a good opportunity to buy some more. I dubbed the strategy I used the 90-10 formula. Very original, I know, but it's something you can also do today. The 90 refers to 90% of my stock market budget that I allocated to index funds and ETFs. These require very little thought as they spread my money between multiple different companies without me having to lift a single finger. The 10 refers to the remaining 10% of my stock market budget that I allocated to more risky long-term plays like investing in small, undervalued companies. If there's one thing that I know, it's that the stock market can only trade at an unrealistic price for so long, be that high or low, meaning that if the stock is undervalued, it will eventually rise to its true value. But the same rule applies for overvalued stocks. This is why I limit this kind of investing to 10%, as even with my fundamental analysis, which is essentially checking the balance sheets and cash flow statements of a company, I can't be right 100% of the time. But at the end of the day, with smaller individual stocks, the upside potential is so huge. You don't even need to risk more than 10% of your money. The main message here is not to sell and keep investing, if anything, more aggressively than before. I mean, would you hold back when all your favourite items were selling at bargain prices? Of course you wouldn't. So why is it any different when the stock market is on sale? If you want to start investing, then it's great to get your journey kick-started with a free stock from public.com worth between $3,000 and $1,000 if you're in the USA. I'll leave a link down below if you'd like to pick that up. Just remember, with investing, your capital is at risk. But let's address the elephant in the room. I know that most people want it all now and they don't care about investing for the long term to eventually retire. $1,000 cash in my bank account, and I had a net worth probably 3 times that. But it wasn't always this way. A little over 3 years before this, I was buried in what felt like crippling debt. Now I really understand if you're starting from zero or even in debt like I was, it can feel impossible to move forward. And I'm not here to tell you this is going to be easy, but with the money saving tips and strategies I'm going to be sharing with you today, it's certainly possible to get some money saved up. The only reason I can remember the exact amount was because at 22, I spent $100,000. Hold on with that, I'll tell you how I spent my 100K later in the video. Let's first talk about how I got into debt and how you can avoid making the same mistakes. I remember when I just turned 18, a friend of a friend agreed to sell me his car. I didn't have the money at the time, but he convinced me it was a good idea to take out a credit card and completely max it out. I didn't really understand how credit cards work because they never really covered that in school. But he told me if I fixed up the car a little bit, I'd be able to sell it for a profit and pay off the credit card within a month, and then I wouldn't be paying any interest. Now, being young and a little bit silly, it seemed like a no-brainer to me. A few days after buying the car, you guessed it, the engine blew up. I had been sold a faulty car and I was left with a large credit card bill that I had no way of paying back. Over time, this credit card bill started growing until I felt it absolutely crippled me. In that moment, I made a promise to myself that if something sounded too good to be true, then it probably was. I remember sitting back on this big old brown couch and wishing it would just swallow me up. My credit score was terrible, my future didn't look great, but I decided I wasn't going to let my life be ruled by one mistake. I wanted to pay off my debts and save lots of money, and you can unlock exactly how I did it just by clicking that thumbs up button. So first I started tracking all of my money. Every penny that went in and out of my bank account, I tracked. I thought of my bank account a bit like a ship with a hole in it, and it was slowly dragging me down. I needed to find the holes so that I could fix them and get my life back on track. Nowadays it's even easier to do this, as you can download a budget management app like Yolt or Mint. I'll leave some links in the description below. Trust me, if you take the time to do this, you will be amazed how much money you're losing from little expenses you don't really need. One that's a huge problem now is all the subscription services, like your cell phone, Netflix, and even those mystery boxes we all sign up for. Now we sign up for these things and then we never cancel them, and every month they leech off our bank accounts even if we don't use them. By tracking everything, it gives you a much better idea of your financial situation. Once you understand where your money's going, it's actually much easier to take control of it. With this information, I was able to take the next step and set some targets. Without a target, it's very, very hard to save any money, because as soon as something shiny and new comes along, you end up blowing all your money and having to restart from zero. A target gives you a direction and helps you to resist all those personalised ads on social media that are trying to separate you from your hard-earned cash. I first had a year-long vision, which was to be entirely debt-free by the end of the year. But I knew if I was going to achieve that, I needed to break it down into manageable steps. When I started working backwards from my vision and thinking how much I needed to save every month, every week, or even every day, everything seemed much more achievable. I knew that if I hit my savings targets every week, then I would achieve my vision. These are called process targets, and they're great as they allow you to take small steps towards a big vision. The only thing that could stop me now was myself, so I needed to set some rules. I fully committed to these rules, and I printed them out and I stuck them on my bathroom mirror. Every day I would read them so that I would stay on track. It made it a lot easier for me to make the right choices when I was tempted to give up. Rule number 1 was save first and live on what was left over. By making my targets more important than my lifestyle, it meant I never had that much money to waste, so I made the most of every penny. Rule number 2 was wait 24 hours before buying anything. Have you ever really got excited about buying something and then a few days later that feeling just fades away and you start to regret what you've bought? By waiting 24 hours to buy something, you're able to think about it with a much clearer mind. Just doing this has saved me so much money, especially when I nearly bought a jet ski. My friend had just bought one of these and was going out every weekend and having a great time. He gave me a go, and as you can imagine, I absolutely loved it, so I decided I'd buy one. However, I waited 24 hours and decided to just go out on my friends for the next 4 weekends. I had a great time, but then he decided to sell it. He said he was bored of it, and he was, to be honest, I'd enjoyed riding it, but I felt the same. So by waiting that 24 hours, it saved me a big impulse purchase I would have regretted. Rule number 3 was not to fall victim to peer pressure and lifestyle inflation. It's so easy to increase your spending when you start earning a little bit more money because you want to impress your friends and your family. But if you can resist this, you'll be able to save a lot more. I actually still shop at the cheapest grocery stores because I know it's all the same stuff, just better value. The next step was to start paying off all my high interest debts. I had lots of different debts, some from friends and families and others from credit cards. And as bad as it may sound, I needed to prioritise the highest interest debt first, which was the credit cards, as they were actually costing me more money and also destroying my credit score. There was really no point having money in a savings account paying 1 to 2% interest if I was still paying down a loan that was charging me 20+%. By paying that off, that was like getting a 20% return on the stock market, which is pretty spectacular. So if you have debts and money in savings, then pay them down. That's what I would do. It's the best guarantee return you're ever likely to get. So I stopped using my credit cards and I set up automatic payments so that I wouldn't be late paying back any of my bills. The faster I could pay these debts off, the better, and then I could be using my credit cards responsibly to build my credit score. In order to do this, I had to master the next. My boss asked if someone wanted to help install a staircase. When we got to the house, I was shocked. He had it all: granite countertops, Persian rugs, and a collection of supercars. I'd look out the window and see the owner relaxing or practicing his golf swing. When I talked to him, he only chatted about his personal hobbies and never his businesses. I asked him, "What's the secret to your success?" He tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Mark, If you can't make money while you sleep, you'll work until you die. This is now known in the modern day as passive income. That was the moment I decided I needed to join the top 1% of men. I'd like to retread my journey with you today. It's very clearly broken into 5 different stages, just like a video game, and at each individual stage I learned something imperative to my future success. You'll learn what I focused on as a hard-nosed businessman, what I obsessed about in the world of investing, and most importantly, the many mistakes I made along the way that have made me the successful person I am today. Stage 1, the awakening. This is when I went from $0 to $20,000. My journey started as I emerged from my mother's womb, and my first words were, which stock should I buy? Just kidding. Like most people, I was pretty clueless about financial education as a kid, but I had the spirit of hustle in me. One of my earliest memories of entrepreneurship goes back to when I was selling fish door to door. Just imagine wiping the sleep dust out of your eyes at 4 in the morning, heading down to a freezing pier and sitting for hours until you'd caught enough mackerel to sell for a profit. Not only that, but grabbing a slimy fish from a bag, ringing a doorbell, looking a person straight in the eye and pitching to them. This built up my confidence and sales skills, 2 of the earliest skills I needed to learn to be successful. As I earned, I soon found that any money I made wasn't really mine. Instead, it would go to places like McDonald's and the girl I happened to be dating. I always seemed to have just enough. This is called lifestyle inflation, the tendency to spend more as you make more. Whatever you earn, it becomes your new baseline, and that's the trap. But being a car fanatic, I've always dreamed of owning a Ferrari. I felt as if they sent such a strong signal to others that you've made it. I'd often speak to my friend Paul, who worked as a valet parking cars for the rich and famous. He once told me something that changed my perspective on luxuries. He said, when people would drive up to the hotel in their Ferraris, they would watch me gawk and love every moment of it. I'm sure they felt admired, important, even respected. But actually, you know what, Mark? I didn't care about them or even notice them. Instead, I thought, wow, if I had that car, people would think I'm cool. And I wonder how many people buy these cars without realizing that people rarely give the driver a moment's thought. I learned that no one would be as impressed with my possessions and luxuries as much as me. People want to be respected and admired by others, but competence, intelligence, and kindness will bring you so much more respect than horsepower ever will. With all the information out there on the internet about how to make money or get rich quick, it can be hard to separate the truth from the marketing. Internet gurus have been getting wealthy for the past decade, telling other people how they can get rich, and there's a whole industry out there based on fantasy. But the truth is, wealth is not always what you see, but what you don't see. I decided instead I'd quietly follow my own path to wealth. But in order to do this, I needed a budget. A budget is knowing where your money will go versus where it went. Little by little, and for the first time, I started seeing my savings account go up. I started building an emergency fund, basically money for a rainy day. I didn't know exactly when or why it would rain, only that one day it would. One day, my boss approached me and ordered me to start making wooden trash cans. I made trash can after trash can. The hours would just crawl by so slowly. I went to my boss and asked him how long I'd have to keep doing this. Until the orders stop coming in, which is probably never, he said, and I felt so deflated. Although I was saving money, I didn't feel passionate about what I was doing, but I wasn't thinking big enough. After all, I didn't care about luxuries, so why would I need more money? Then it hit me. I realised that control over your time is the greatest thing money can buy. If I had passive income, I could spend my time doing the things I really loved. The problem is, it takes a lot of time or money to start making enough passive income to become financially free. We spend thousands of hours every year working in the pursuit of money, so I asked myself, what was I truly passionate about? I had a burning passion for radio controlled models, and I noticed many people in this industry were making a lot of mistakes. I saw the true potential and the ways that I could improve on what had come before me. I once read in a book that if you could identify a problem and you had a better way of doing things, you could turn it into a business. Stage 2, the hustle. This is when I went from $20,000 to $100,000. So I got to work. I was so excited about my business plans that I shared them with a close friend and confidant, and to my shock, the unimaginable happened. He stole my idea and set up my entire business for himself. But before I get into that, first I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Public.com. Let's be honest, 2022 has been a pretty volatile year for the stock market, and that's exactly why our long-term sponsor, Public.com, wants to help you become a better investor. On Public, you can invest in individual stocks as well as ETFs, all the while learning from notable investors, analysts and top CEOs with their optional social features and town halls. My favourite thing about Public is they don't participate in payment for order flow by selling your trades to market makers, meaning they have no reason to incentivise you to trade more than necessary like some other platforms do. On Public, you can invest, learn and see what top investors are doing all in one place. And the best part is, for a limited time, you can get a free start worth between $3,000 and $1,000 with the link down below in the description. Anyway, back to the story. The reality is that I needed some money to pursue my dream, but my savings just weren't enough. I wasn't about to give up. I drew up a business plan, went to the bank and applied for my first loan. It wasn't easy and I had to visit multiple banks. However, eventually I secured the money I needed. While some people earn their wealth investing in the stock market, I reinvested the earnings from my businesses to open more stores and even buy back my original idea from my old friend. I started to know more and more people in the business world. A lot of these individuals became my mentors and would teach me things like how to build a business that scales, how to improve sales, and how to manage people. As my income grew and I solved problems, I was not only growing my net worth, but becoming a top 1% man as well. As the good times continued, I increasingly bet on them continuing, which led to one of my most significant life crashes and moments of despair. I remember it like it was yesterday, walking into the shop that I had initially started to give my father a job in his later years, and instead of being greeted by the magical emporium filled with all the toys that I could have only dreamed of having as a kid, I was met with a smashed roof, empty shelves and my products laying broken, thrown across the floor. This hit me so hard that the memory has been seared into my subconscious and I sometimes still see it when I close my eyes. You may think, it's all right, Mark, I know you, I bet you had insurance, everything was okay and you bounced back. Well, in fact, I'd grown so fast and I was making so much money that not everything was correctly structured within my business. Although we were insured, I'd forgotten to update it with all the new stock that we'd acquired since the opening of the store. But the disaster doesn't stop there. It gets even worse. I got a phone call a few days later and one of my staff informed me that another 2 locations had been hit. Luckily, one of these attempts was unsuccessful on my flagship store as they couldn't break through the door. However, they'd driven a truck straight through the side of the store that was responsible for serving the entirety of London, and the damage was horrendous, let alone the stock that we lost. That's when I learned about the balance between risk and reward. See, making money requires taking risks, operating quickly and putting yourself out there. But keeping money requires the opposite. It requires humility and fear that what you've made can be taken away from you just like that. Once you lose 95% of your money, you have to gain 1,900% just to get back to where you started. Taking too much risk can bury you so deep in a hole, it can be nearly impossible to get out of. I even started to move my operations online to adapt to the changing times. Stage 3, the trap. This is when I went from $100,000 to $1 million. I realized that one of the biggest problems people face is when they turn their passion into a vehicle to accumulate money. They are now reliant on it to fund their lifestyle, leading to their passion becoming their prison. I mean, the biggest bottleneck in my business was actually the business owner, me. As the business got bigger and as we tried to move it online, so did the number of problems, complaints and things to worry about.